Alright, so let's get back here. We were just talking about outline mode, and you can see how outline mode would be very helpful if you've created a lot of your outlines and you're ready to start coloring your object. But for this moment, we're noticing that it's not super helpful in that we can't see our base image underneath. So what I'm going to do is just hit Control Y, and that should make it exit outline mode. Okay, so let's continue. I'm going to remove the color from this object. And as you'll recall from earlier, even though there's nothing attached to this object, it's still there. So the next thing I'm going to show you guys is how to create a custom shape with the pen tool. We're going to create the custom shape for the head right here. So what we're going to do is we're going to hit P on our keyboard to activate the pen tool. It's also right here. You can see that the pen tool has lots of fun different variants. Another cool thing to note about the pen tool is that if you hold down Control, it will default to the control you had active right before it. So I like to use that in conjunction with the direct selection tool. The direct selection tool, if you'll recall, moves the anchor points of the object. So let's go back to the pen tool, just hit P on your keyboard or click right here and click and start dragging. Now you can see that if I click and drag, it's going to create this tangent here. These are handles that will allow us to manipulate the shape. If I hold down Control, you can see I can go in and start manipulating those. Now when I let go of Control, it goes back to the pen tool and I can go back to creating my shape. There we go. Alright. So now that I have the shape created, you'll notice that what happened was that it created this little guy right here because of this edge. Now this edge, you'll notice, does not have any handles, and that's because this edge is a cornered edge. Okay, it's a cornered anchor point. Now I can convert it and I can tweak the handles myself, or I'll just undo that. Or when I select the object, I can take advantage of this little guy. Now watch what happens when I click and drag to the right. See that? It allows me to bevel the edge. I can do the same thing here. Now the reason that's important is because very rarely in life will you find something with a perfectly hard edge. So it helps add a little bit of realism to your shape. If I hold down Alt, I can manipulate just the one handle. You can see this breaks the tangent right here. So I can manipulate that by itself. I can also bevel that. So I've got a nice little bevel there. So yes, the shape has become more complex, but it's much more dynamic. Alright, so now that that's taken care of, let's go ahead and start adding some more of these shapes. Alright, so you can see here that I have this little bit of shoulder armor. Well, I can imagine that shoulder armor is probably going to be taking some damage. So what I want to do is I want to indicate that this shoulder armor has taken a few hits in the past. So I'm going to go here and I'm going to take advantage of my paintbrush and I'm going to paint in some of these. Now I'll go ahead and add a color to the paintbrush, something nice and dark. And let me go ahead and show you guys something with the brushes palette. Now sometimes you'll find yourself working with Illustrator and there won't be any brushes in this palette. So what will happen was essentially you'll click on the paintbrush and nothing will happen because it doesn't have any brush to work from. If that ever does happen, you just click the new brush icon I'm going to select a calligraphy brush, but you can see you have other bright types of brushes you can experiment with. And I'm going to lower this. Now I like to work with a really low setting. Okay? But you can do whatever you want. So I did 0.25, so you can see it even works with a decimal. So now I'll just click and I'll draw. All right. Isn't that fun? Okay. Now, just like a shape, I can manipulate this path that I've just created interactively with the direct selection tool. I can also add and subtract anchor points. So at this point, I'm going to remove the anchor point. The reason I'm doing that is because the fewer the anchor points I have, the simpler the shape, and that's what I'm looking for here. Okay. Just manipulating it into position. Okay, so I essentially created a line using the paintbrush. So that's all well and good. The issue comes into play when you're trying to stretch the line out and give it width and whatnot. Because as you can tell, what Illustrator wants to do is essentially just use this as a straight line. Now we can do specific things to this in that we can adjust where the shape is positioned. I can go in and I can do some things to adjust the stroke. For example, if I select the shape and I change the stroke type there, see, I'm not seeing much of a difference because we're at such a small scale. So what can we do to kind of overcome some of this? Okay, so I'm just going to delete this one, and I'm going to take the pen tool, click and drag like so. All right. Now with this selected, I'm going to activate this little guy. This is the width tool, and its hotkey is Shift W. I can click on this and stretch out some of that stuff. So like I said, this is really good for hairs, things like that. I can also adjust things with the width tool. You see that? So I can do some really interesting things. So you can see that can get to a nice tip there, and wherever I want this to kind of end, I most certainly can place that. And again, this is just going to run the exact same way as my other shape. It'll just be, it was just created with the pen tool instead of the paintbrush. All right, so I'm going to leave you with that. And if you have any questions, comments, or concerns, please email me at cdunlap@aii.edu. Again, that's cdunlap@aii.edu.